everyone in his family. Joined during World War II, some branch of the military. After the war, he was stationed at Donaldson Air Force Base in Greenville, South Carolina, where he met my mother, and that's why I'm from South Carolina instead of Kansas. So I've got an excuse for not being here. But it is great to be with you here today, and it's good to be away from South Carolina politics. I don't know if you've been watching TV. I'm a little afraid of my opponent. He's actually one of the best-known politicians in the world today. Alvin Green. I don't know what to say, but I think the less said the better, and that's one of the reasons. That's one of the reasons I'm in Kansas today. Is I'd rather talk about Jerry than my opponent. But it's exciting to see the energy out across the country. A few years ago, I bet you try to have something like this, although Jerry's different. People do come to his town halls, but it's hard to get people engaged and informed and about what's going on in our country until recently. And my wife and I went through this grueling process a few months ago of whether or not I should even run again, because I'm up for election this time, and I didn't want to spend another 6 years in Washington with the same people who are there now. And I didn't want to waste that time, because I'm like Jerry. Every week I get on a plane, I leave my wife, I come up to Washington, we work there with a bunch of guys who are usually mad at me for trying to stop what they're doing, and then I fly home on the weekend and cut the grass and try to be normal. But what we see today is exciting for those of us who are in office, because people are passionate. They feel a sense of urgency. They come out to these, whether it's a rally or a town hall or a tea party, and you go into the crowd and they grab your arm and they'll say, "Thanks for fighting," and then they'll say, "What can I do?" They want to know what they can do. And they say, "I've never been involved in politics before." They don't give a hoot about Republicans or Democrats, but they love their country. They know that we've been blessed with this amazing country called America that has given us so much opportunity and hope for our future. That, you know, I've got 2 grandchildren now, and I like to think that they'll have all the chances I did to struggle and fail and succeed and grow up in freedom. But I'm really worried, and that's what I see on the faces and hear in the voices of people all across the country. They're not really angry at anybody, but they're angry at what's happening to our country. But they're fearful, and they want to know if they can be a part of changing that. And they ask, what can they do? And I just say exactly what you're doing now. Just the more active, the more informed. If we can just get Americans who love what it is about our country that makes it so great, just to go out and vote. You know, the hardest thing we have as candidates is just get people to vote. People who agree with us, people who support us, to get them to vote. But what's happening all across the country this year is people are voting. They're voting in primaries. They're looking at the candidates. They're asking questions, as I hope you will today. But we have the opportunity this November to have an earthquake election. And I think to move our country away from the edge of a cliff. I mean, we literally are on the edge of a financial cliff where the people running our country don't even know how we can pay the interest on our debt over the next 10 years. That's not a lot to leave for our children. But there are solutions. But they're not taking over health care and taking over our financial system. Folks, if you told me even a few years ago that in 2010 the federal government would own our largest auto companies, our largest insurance companies, our largest mortgage companies, they would control our education system, our health care system, our financial system, that people wouldn't even know how to invest because they don't know what their tax rate's going to be next year, or what health care is going to cost them, or whether or not we're going to have cap and trade that raises their energy prices, or take away secret ballots when workers are trying to avoid unions. All of these things are being thrown at people who are trying to create jobs right now. They don't know what's going on. But Americans understand that, and that's what's different about this election. They know something's wrong. What we need to do, particularly as Republicans, is to re-earn the trust of the American people. To stand in front of people and say, we had the chance and we blew it. We had the White House, we had the House, we had the Senate, and we had too many people who were part of that spending culture, who felt it was their job just to take money home. And they thought they could fool the American people. They kept saying, we'll bring home the bacon, you will re-elect me, don't worry about the debt. But Americans are worried about the debt now, and they're ready to do something about it. And I think we can. In the Senate, We're just a few votes away now from being able to stop this terrible legislation. And we've got candidates like Jerry Moran around the country, like Marco Rubio or Pat Toomey in Pennsylvania, or over here in Colorado where I was yesterday, Ken Buck, and Mike Lee just beat an incumbent in Utah. Americans are ready for a change. And this November, I think we're going to see that earthquake election that turns us away from the cliff. And that's really why I'm here. I found in the Senate, because of the Senate rules, that just a couple of people can make a big difference. When McCain and Kennedy were trying to push through this big amnesty bill a few years ago, there were only 4 or 5 senators willing to fight that. And the battle was in the Senate. But we found by taking our message to the media, to the blogs, the radio talk show, to Fox News, that we had millions of Americans standing with us, even when the Republicans in Washington wouldn't stand with us. And we shut down the phone systems and the computer servers in the Capitol to the point where I actually had a senator stand up in a Republican conference who was complaining about all the radio talk shows back home and the people calling his office complaining that he was supporting that bill. And he said, "I will not be intimidated by the American people." But he was. And he marched his little self down there and voted against it, not because of the few of us who were fighting it in the Senate, but because he felt the heat from millions of Americans. And Reagan said, if you can't make them see the light, they can feel the heat. And that's what you're doing. And that's what this movement, this American awakening, is doing all over the country. All we need is a few new recruits in the Senate.